Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamsin Entertainment, and welcome to the conversation. Before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss the conversation, but most importantly, please share this video. Let's get the word out there that there's a community for geeks, nerds, and dorks where we can talk about all the things we love. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're looking at Yojimbo, and as I mentioned in the Seven Samurai review, I didn't know what Yojimbo meant. It's not the main character's name. The main character's name is Sanjuro, which is the sequel to Yojimbo. Brief little side note in history about me. I once started to teach myself Japanese. I didn't do too bad. I used a program that teaches you simple conversations and it progresses you to more complicated pieces. So I was able to pick out when they said Yojimbo, and because it's subtitled, Yojimbo means bodyguard or bouncer in Japanese. So it's pretty cool. So Yojimbo translated is just bodyguard. And no, not that bodyguard. Watching other reviewers talk about older films, specifically Kurosawa films, Yojimbo inspired yet another Western. I can't remember which one they said. I want to say Fistful of Dollars, but I could be wrong. I just remember it was definitely an Eastwood movie that drew inspiration from Yojimbo. So this movie is very different from Seven Samurai. That's a pro and con against it. The pro is that this one, even though it kind of has a similar story, a town needs help. I mean, that's the very bare bones of this story. Town needs help. This one's a little more lighthearted than Seven Samurai. Seven Samurai did have its lighthearted moments because Toshiro Mifune was kind of like the comic relief. He kind of is again in this film. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I found it amusing how his character, Sanjuro, let me get into a little more of the plot. So Sanjuro is this wandering samurai, and he comes upon this town, and this is coming up on one of the cons here. So he talks to some town folks, like just outside the town, and they tell him the problem with the town. The constable has no spine, the mayor is equally spineless, and there are two factions that run this place, and they do it through gambling and a brothel. And that's all you really needed. He goes further into town and meets up with a restaurant owner who just becomes Mr. Exposition. He dumps a whole ton of plot. And a lot of it we already heard. He just goes a little more into detail, but he didn't really need that. And there's the con in this movie, or at least in the opening. Kurosawa in Seven Samurai used a lot of visual storytelling. He stuck to the golden rule of show, don't tell. He does that in Yojimbo as well. But for whatever reason, after Sanjuro walks into town, which is a simple enough opening, it's just a field, and then he enters the frame with his back to the camera, which is just visually telling us that we're going to be seeing this world through his eyes. Great. And then just a few minutes later, it's just exposition dump, and I wasn't expecting that. Of course, I didn't know what to expect watching this movie. It's my second Kurosawa movie. So after the long-winded talk from the old man, you actually get to see the two factions. Well, actually, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Sanjuro goes over to the one faction. I'm sorry, I can't remember them, but I'll put it in post. And he offers his services. And he gets an astronomical amount, especially for the time. I think it's still set in 16th century Japan. I'm not sure. But he gets ultimately offered 50 ryu. I would surmise that that's a buttload of money, especially for the time. 25 up front, 25 when he defeats the enemy. Well, what he does, Sanjuro is the smartest character in this movie. He gets both of them to basically stand off in the middle of town. And then there's a bell tower. It's nothing elaborate. It's just a tower with a small bell. It's meant to alarm the town for, trouble and stuff like that. He just climbs the top of that. Well, I don't know why I keep on doing this. I keep on getting ahead of this. He tells the person who just hired him, like, you know what? I'm going to let you two handle this. And he climbs the bell tower. And what he's really doing is just sizing up both sides. And what's revealed is that both sides are just cowards. They just happened to walk into this town, it seems. I guess they had some money of their own. One had a brothel that they set up. The other one had a gambling ring that they set up. And they've both just been fighting for control over this town. And when it comes down to it, both are cowards. And it's just funny seeing them, like, kind of dance back and forth, like who's going to strike first. And he does that through most of the film. This film takes some twists and turns that, here's another con. It could have used just a little revision in the final script. Things that need to be introduced instead of just appearing. For instance, halfway through the film, you're introduced to a woman that's being captured by the brothel because her husband lost her in a gambling match. But it's just brought up out of nowhere. There's no explanation, no lead up, no nothing. There could have been just like, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't quite think of how they would integrate that better, but it's just, well, let me think about it. Editing is a powerful tool. So this will be like a few minutes for me to edit out, but for you, it will be instant. Okay, you could still have the two people in the beginning explaining the troubles of the town, but they had like a complete stranger, I don't even think they bring him back in, explain the first bit of troubles. They could have had just the husband that lost his wife and his son explain to him what's going on and why they're on the outskirts of town and all that. That would have settled it right then and there. So that would have cleaned that up. And also, about halfway through the movie, they introduce another character that's part of one of the factions. And what's so special about him is that he has a six-shooter, and he's the second smartest person in the film. He figures out that Sanjuro is playing both sides, and he confronts him in the restaurant owner's business. And Sanjuro reaches for his katana, but this character with the six-shooter cuts him off at the pass and captures him. A better way to integrate his character is, instead of having being like an underboss from what it seems like they're playing him as, they could have just made him the boss of the other gang. So just those two little adjustments would have made this a whole lot better movie. Aside from that, I really enjoyed this movie. Just seeing Sanjuro play both sides and see how dumb and cowardice they are is just hilarious. I'm really enjoying these Kurosawa movies. Next week is the sequel, Sanjuro. I can't wait because I really like watching these older films. I do have what's called the Samurai Trilogy in my Amazon wish list. I double checked it just to be sure that the Yojimbo series isn't the Samurai Trilogy. It's not, thank God. And it's a different director. One moment so I can find out who the director is. Hiroshi Inagaki. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too much. But it's a trilogy also starring Toroshi Mifune. So I'm looking forward to getting that. I'm actually going to make the next few movies I want to review the Man with No Name trilogy, Clint Eastwood classics. I'm looking forward to it. I'm pretty sure one of them, if not all three of them, were probably inspired by not necessarily Kurosawa films, but samurai films. And I'm interested to learn, are there any westerns that have inspired samurai films? Because I know that Godzilla is partially inspired by King Kong, and that the Japanese actually did make their own King Kong film, and that unfortunately it was lost to the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There's only like stills and poster images of their King Kong film. I really enjoyed Yojimbo. I'm looking forward to Sanjuro. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on Kurosawa movies and samurai films in general, because as I was watching this, I paused it periodically and I was just looking up other samurai films. I want to watch Hidden Fortress because, again, from another YouTuber, I learned that Hidden Fortress inspired partially Star Wars. Lucas is a huge fan of Kurosawa, and I'd like to see the inspiration for A New Hope. That would be really, really cool. If you like what you saw, like it. If you think other people like it, share it. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.